Game loaded.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Hacking the Fifth. That's hacks, homebrews, and home rules for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, as well as other tabletop RPGs. If the music is too loud, There we go. I have to have the music. This probably will not go to YouTube because, well, it's Christmas time and there's a huge party where I live, so I have to compete with this noise in the background. So today we're gonna be talking or start talking about an adventure I'm working on, which is the unnameable terror or horror. And one of the first things that happens when you create any adventure is that you need hooks for your players. Now, you can always start with you all meet in a tavern, right? But I like to have a little bit more than just that. And so, cool thing about Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is that it actually creates a lot. There's a lot of material for hooking players and going to the adventure, such as not only character class and race, but also traits, ideals, bonds, backgrounds are very useful as well. And of course, from the DMG, we have factions. We talked about factions in the last week, last Sunday. So let's start with the idea of this adventure. Before we go ahead, what is the background? What's going on? The adventurers, tutors, are hired / called upon to go to the village of Hamlet and find a man by the name of Adenfort, an acolyte of Saint Cuthbert in the village, in the town, in town. Who hired them? Oh, let's look at who hired them. They come from Bervelbunk, which is the sort of ruling city of the area. And and I'm using here Living Greyhawk as a tier from 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons, which was very Greyhawk centric. Bervelbunk is a semi-independent realm owning fealty to the Archclerisy of Veluna, but nearly autonomous in practice. Capital is Vervelbank. Basically, it's a city and its surrounding lands. 14 freeholds and similar fiefs, all less than 500 square miles in size. The entire viscounty is a bishopric, under St. Cuthbert, and is divided into 8 guardianships overseen by abbots. Some guardianships include more than one political fief. The current leader of the St. Cuthbert Church, and if that sounds familiar, that's because during 3rd edition, Greyhawk became sort of the rigor, the base world for adventuring. Of course, at 4th edition and 5th edition, they move away from that. So we have, let's see, it's I can fix that. No. And I'm going back to that. So I'm using a lot of materials from 5th edition, from early editions that support the World of Greyhawk. Why the World of Greyhawk, you ask yourselves? Well, the reason why I'm doing the World of Greyhawk is because, well, it's the world I know. It's a campaign world I know. I consider it to be sort of the base Dungeons and Dragons world. A lot of the material I'm going to be using, such as Temple of Elemental Evil and Return to Temple of Elemental Evil, Return to the Ruins of Castle Greyhawk, and other adventures and modules and resources are from Greyhawk. It's a type of adventure that I know and love, and therefore, and I also think that doesn't get a lot of love nowadays with everything sort of fixated on the Forgotten Realms. So, without much further ado, they're being hired by their patron. Okay. Their patron is the head of the church in Verbobank. I'm sorry about that. That probably was a. Now that is the adventure's given hook, like why they're doing what they're doing. However, different characters and different players will come at this adventure from different points of view. First of all, we have character and class, right? Since this adventure has to do with the Church of St. Cuthbert, um, clerics and paladins of St. Cuthbert would volunteer to go to Homeland, to the village, to the town, in search of this man. Right. Others, such as fighters, etc., could also go, but their class doesn't necessarily point to that. Saint Cuthbert is also a human deity, so mostly human or maybe half elven followers of the deity. These characters would be humans or mostly half elves, followers of Saint Cuthbert. If we're going using class and class and race, others could join, right? And there's other reasons to do this, but I think that this would be a good hook for clerics and paladins in your group, especially if, as tends to be the case, many cases because of the high charisma of both clerics and paladins, they tend to be leaders in the group. So it could be that a cleric and a paladin, your player character who has one of those job titles, gathers around the other players and says, "I'm going down to this location. I would like you to accompany me." Right? Now, for these characters and other characters, you can use the trait ideals of bonds as well as a hook. Let's give some examples of that. For example, again, religious instruction. Your characters don't have to be clerics or paladins, but they could have the acolyte background. And let's read acolyte on page 127. You spend your life in the service of a temple to a specific god or pantheon of gods. You act as an intermediary between the realm of the holy and the mortal world, performing sacred rites and offering sacrifice in order to conduct worshippers in the presence of the divine, right? You might have the character, if you're playing a character, might have moved on from their religious devotion. Don't necessarily have to be either cleric or paladin or anything that has to do with divine magic, but they have that background, right? Maybe that's how they know the cleric or paladin of the group. So they go, okay, the Church of St. Cuthbert requires the service of us. I have connections to the church or an allied church. It could be also the Church of Rao, which is another Greyhawk deity. And they in this area, they work hand in hand. In fact, in Valuna, the ruler of Valuna is the arch cleric, right? The canon of the god of Rao. So that's one way to go. But other traits and bonds could be as well, right? Aside from, we just want to adventure, of course. Folk hero is a good one. You come from a humble social rank, but you are destined to so much more. Already, people in your home village regard you as their champion, and your destiny calls you to stand against the tyrants and monsters threatening the common folk everywhere, right? The mission calls not only to acquire this man, right, to fetch him, but also to bring him back, and so he might need protection. And the Church of Cuthbert is also a lawful neutral church, but it has a lot of lawful good followers. So while again the character might not be lawful, um, they might be good. Right? So let's start writing some of the bonds and traits backgrounds. Acolyte, um, folk hero. There's also a faction agent, but we'll get that in a moment, right? A noble who want favors with the church, right? And that's probably the ones I can, on top of my head, think about, right? And of course, a soldier could be ordered to go in this mission, right? As a caravan guard, as a companion of the others, be a backup, that sort of thing, right? So those are good, especially backgrounds. Well, these are backgrounds, sorry. I put them in bonds and traits, ideals, and bonds are between characters. So let's look at the soldier, for example, a personality trait that could help. Um, well, traits not so much, but say an ideal. The greater good. Our lot is to lay down our lives in defense of others. So helping others in this mission, and Saint Cuthbert is a deity of protection of the common folk. So again, that could be appealing. Responsibility. I do what I must and obey authority. They being ordered to go down there. And nation. They could be a soldier of the nation. So it could be my city, nature, and people are all that matter. So this is again a mission from the city fathers of Verberbunk and over Luna, and they go there. Now let's go to factions, because this is where it gets interesting. In the last time we talked about some of the factions that will be employed in Unnameable Terror, such as the Order of the Eight, and others. The Circle of Eight, not the Order of Eight, Circle of Eight, the Knights of the Heart, or Knights of Luna, the Knights of Luna, the Old Faith, and the Scarlet Brotherhood. Now, for now, the Scarlet Brotherhood is not going to come into play. So we're not going to only talk about from the Circle of Eight to the Old Faith. Now, one of the reasons why Homelet is an important town is because it's being central to the events of multiple adventures around the Temple of Elemental Evil. Back in first edition and second edition, first edition and then third edition, first, second, and third edition Dungeons and Dragons. There was, in fact, two Return to the Elemental Evils. I think Return to the Elemental Evil was rewritten for third edition, but there was a version of it in second edition. So what happened was there was this big battle against the forces of evil, and it happened near Homelet. It's called Emerdy Meadows. And the forces of good, the forces of weal, won. And they closed the temple, but then temple attempted to rise again, and adventurers met with the temple over and over again. Members of the Circle of Eight were participating in the battle. That means that the Circle of Eight is always keeping an eye on the region and any news of resurgence of the temple. They might have the character or characters, if they're all agents of the Circle of Eight, and they don't have to be. You can have characters be from different factions, and that's a good choice if you're willing to balance more than one faction. They're just going to the town, right? They're going there. Maybe they have heard that of the missive sent by the to the canon archcleric of Saint Cuthbert in Verberbunk, and said, "Hey, listen, we find this curious. Why don't you go with this group and check out?" Right? Circle of Eight would have, let's say, factions. Let's work on that. Factions. Circle of Eight. Certainly wizards, agents, members. Why? Because Circle of Eights are some of the most important um, wizards in Hall of Greyhawk, and they include characters like at some point or another Mordecai or Mordecai. If you know about many of the spells that bear his name, you probably heard about it, even if you never played Greyhawk. So if they're either an agent, I mean anybody should be. Remember, in last time we did distinction between agents and members. We had the rule that each faction can have a variety of agents, but only certain type of characters, depending on alignment and character class, would be actual members of the faction. So it could be anyone, certainly, but probably wizards will be wizards, rogues, as spies and the like, something like that. Oh, by the way, that's another background. Spy comes from rogue. Could be sage, right? And they could be members. They could be sages trying to investigate the history of the place, as well as any other things. Another faction that could be interested in this, and why they would be interested, would be the Knights of the Heart. Knights of the Heart are an order of knighthood that has taken upon themselves to protect this area, these kingdoms, Valuna, Verbobank, etc., whether they want to or not, right? Kind of like the Order of the Gauntlet. So they're independent in that sense. Probably Knights of the Heart, because many of them have clerics and paladins and warriors and fighters. They would, if this is an important mission, either heard about this or it would be somewhere from which the Archcanon of Verbobank could reach out and recruit. Like, listen, I need able men or able adventurers. Let's not fall into the, misgendering characters. You don't know what gender they're going to be. And say, we need people, so send us your best. Again, these could be fighters, paladins, clerics. Third faction would be the Knights of Luna. Now, the Knights of Luna would be interested, and this is the Knights of Luna are basically a faction around Selene, which is really the only elven nation. But in this area, especially in Verbobank, there are a lot of elves and half-elves. So, anything going on, strangely going on, they might be interested. They might be a situation where the characters already are in they're a character in, say, in the area, and they heard about the situation and want to join, or again, because they have contacts and they're curious about the area because there's a lot of elves and half elves, they might want to. So elven and half elves seeking to help or protect their kind in the area. One particular thing that's happening is that there's tensions between the gnomes and the human leaders in Verbobank. And the gnomes are the Crone Hills. And that has put the elves and half-elves who live mostly in Verbobank in a difficult situation, right? Gnomes and elves have been allies for a very long time, since what the event called the Hateful Wars, which they drove out from in a series of mountain range called the Lord Mills. They drove out all the goblinoid races. So they are tightly, entwined. So maybe, or investigate the situation, the tensions between gnomes and humans. That might be another reason why they might not be first interest, but they might sell. So they may be sending people out there. They heard about this expedition, they're going to go down there, right? So that might be a reason why, on the surface, your character might say, "Okay, I just and I'm just a member of the party. We've been together for a while, and we're going down there. But really, I have contact with the Knights of Luna. I'm an agent of them, and maybe I want to be a member. Maybe not a member yet at first level, and we'll want to, inform them what's going on, right? And the other faction would be the Old Faith. Now, for the Old Faith, they're druids and others who are centered on nature. They're druids and clerics of nature. The people in the region, especially in Homelet, are worshippers of what's Obat High, right? So that's the thing. Now, the point here being that maybe make this a little bit magical. They had divinations have point to Homelet as the source of future problems. I hate to get highly magical up front. I mean, there's aspects of this that are magical, of course, very magical. This is D&D after all, but not up front. I like to start with more mundane situations, but maybe if you need to get a druid or a cleric of nature involved in your party, maybe also bards as well, if they're connected to the Old Faith, then maybe you can say, okay, listen, your bosses at the Old Faith and this faction had dreams, importance, and seen divinations that it's important to focus on what's going to happen in Homelet. It's connected to larger problems. Now, why is Adenfort so important? I'll give you an explanation. This is a spoiler if you ever want to play this adventure. Spoiler. Adenfort was a former member of the Temple of Elemental Evil that escaped the last attack by adventurers and sought refuge with the local temple of St. Cuthbert. Originally, what he wanted to do was to infiltrate the temple, right? So in a future time, he could turn against them and betray them. However, his intent was to infiltrate the temple. But over time, he converted to the faith. Essentially, he remembers the kind of things that the temple would do, the horrors, the tortures, the dealing with demons and the like. And like, you know what? I don't want to deal with that anymore. I'm just going to go, hey, I'm going to go on the straight and narrow. And he joined the Temple of St. Cuthbert. It so happens that as of late, he has had a series of troubling dreams that point to the return of none other than Terry's Doom, the Lord of Entropy. He sent a letter to the canon of St. Cuthbert. I mean, get the actual title. I apologize. I'm not trying to get the actual title therein. Read. Bishop, the bishop. Well, it's not canon, the bishop. The bishop of St. Cuthbert in the area. Telling him of his dreams. Why did he do that? Well, the characters are going to realize that there's the reasons why he did that, and he was sent a letter directly to them and not to his, to his chief priest. Well, I can tell you right now, it's that he didn't want to, be accused of being an evil doer, right? 5th edition doesn't have detect evil spells the way it used to, so there's that. And he didn't want to abuse, hospitality and the trust that they put in him. So, and he then have recruited the party to come down to Homelet and retrieve this person. Of course, there's a matter of what happens in the interim, right? So these are some of the reasons. Of course, you can always fall back on, money. Money and more money. About 200 gold pieces will be paid for them to go down there and retrieve this person, because that's how important this is. For people who don't know what the deity of Tarzan is, well, it's a great deity of entropy and destruction. Such an evil deity, in fact, that where he or it were to resurface again, all the deities of Greyhawk would rise against them. And you can find the list of Greyhawk deities in page 295 of the Player Handbook. And we go down. St. Cuthbert, god of common sense and seal, lawful neutral. Suggested domains knowledge, circle at the center of starboard line, that's the symbol. And then you have Tarzdun, god of eternal darkness. Here it says chaotic evil, I guess because of a lot of entropy, might be chaos, might be a good thing for him. Or it used to be neutral evil. Since it's 5th edition, we'll stick to chaotic evil for now. Suggested domains is trickery, and his symbol is a dark spiral or inverted cigarette. Spoilers for Temple of Mental Evil, not the current adventure in Forgotten Realms, but the old ones, the Return to Temple of Mental Evil. Another spoiler. Spoiler. Okay, you were warned. Is that it is Tarzdun who was behind the original temple. Now, this is not a rehash of that adventure. The player characters will be in the area, but it's not a rehash. So, just a warning. It just starts there and then it will go to some other places. What's also very interesting is that the person behind this is someone who everybody thinks should be dead, but isn't, and it was a member of the temple. Hence the title of the adventure, The Unnameable Terror or Horror. It's a working process. So now that we have our hooks, we have the characters going down to from Riverbunk, moving south to the village of Hamlet. But a adventure needs random encounters. These are first level characters, so I want them to get some experience before they actually hit the town. I will not be using a milestone system, but I will have suggest during the adventure, which I'll write it up a little bit later, and put the write-up up in the Google Docs. There will be certain milestones, like, well, if the characters either if you're not using the XP system, you're using the milestone system, or they get too little XP, and this is what they should be getting. So let's go to some of the random encounters. Very simple table. It also has side quests as well, but we'll go to the random encounters first and foremost. Let me get basically I wrote all this during the time that I had no power here in Puerto Rico because of Hurricane Katrina. So let's do this. Start 1. Guard patrol. 4. Four guards on horseback. Guard monster manual page 348. This will be a friendly encounter. Basically they meet. That's a chance for the players to ask for directions or any news, etc., of what's going on, as well as rumors. Upended cart with 3 wounded gnomes. The gnomes were ambushed. The gnomes are commoners. Page 3342 of the Monster Manual. I'll be using basically standard monsters unless otherwise. We'll get into creating new monsters and changing monsters in the future. This is C Gnome Rescue side quest. Okay. 3 Bandit Ambush. This is going to be a tough one. These are first level characters. 8 times bandits. DC 12 to, perception, wisdom. Perception. Pretty low. And you can find, and they are in page 343 of the Monster Manual. These, again, another spoiler, these bandits work for the Shadow. I know. I'm stealing an idea from Dave the Human. Dave, if you ever listen to this or watch this, thank you for creating this. Maybe superrating your character a little bit. I apologize. And he has been hired to kidnap Adam Fort, right? Of course, players don't know this yet. 4. Battlefield. 3 dead field. Battlefield. Okay. 3 lizard folk. 3 dead lizard folk. From page 204, Monster Manual. And 4 times 4 bandits. Again, bandits. They won't find a lot of money. Treasure. I should. By the way, I probably put treasure all at once in one area, but so that if you're running the adventure, you can go to, okay, you ran this part, okay, this is a treasure. It has all all the treasure in one place, so you don't have to go back and search for everything. So per bandit 1d4 times 1d4 silver pieces. Again, this is a low level adventure. Start at first level 1. 5. Tinkers and soothsayers. Basically, you see a troop of tinkers and soothsayers traveling the road. Again, they're commoners. This is again a great chance for the dungeon master to have a role-playing session, ask questions about the area, where they're going, etc. If they heard any rumors, if, for example, the dungeon master wants to include any rumors and whatnot. And roll 1d8 on a 6 or 7, 6 to 7, nothing happens. On an 8, re-roll. Right. Or choose the encounter, or pick the encounter of your choice. I like these little. Probably the entire adventure is going to be peppered with little encounter tables and rumor tables and like. Those are pretty good because whenever there's a lull in the action, especially when traveling, for example, or they're in an inn or something like that, there's something to do, right? And you can always roll, right? And you can have a role-playing session and the like. And sometimes, especially beginner dungeon masters are like, what do I do? What do I do? Oh, so don't worry about it. Here's a little table you can use, right? There's another part I want to say before I close. It's going to be a short stream. And that is useful allies. What are useful allies? Useful allies are basically groups. Every part of the adventure at some point or another will have a group or groups, local groups, with their own agenda, who may, if the player characters play their cards right, help them in a limited fashion. The rules for useful allies are as follows. They are not a substitute for player action. I've seen some players who are trying to be very smart about things, or they think they're being very clever, and say, well, I'll call the guards, right? Guards, help us, right? And they say, oh, and then the problem with that is that they expect to get the experience points and treasure from the adventure without actually running none of the risk. So these are not characters designed to substitute the player. And you can use this in any adventure. This is really, of all the things we talked about, this is an actual hack, right? Or a suggestion. They're not substitute for a player adventure. These groups have their own agenda. And I said they're not. They may have an agenda that crosses path with what the players want to do, hence a possibility of an alliance. But they're not. Again, they have their own thing they're doing, before, during, and after, right? And the PCs have to convince the would-be allies that to help. It should never be a given that these people would simply jump into helping. I don't want the situation. This happens on a lot of adventures, published adventures, where the person creating the adventure creates a very difficult encounter and says, "Oh, wait a minute! I want the encounter to be be a challenge because I'll throw a lot of enemies or powerful creatures and the like." And they're like, "Oh, but by the way, if they get into too much trouble, then Deus Machina. Here comes, here comes the allies. Here comes the help to save them, save the day." Or prevent them from if the Deus Machina is about preventing the players to ruin the adventure by capturing or killing a critical villain, stuff like that, then it's like, oh well, then these people jump in and take over or whatever, right? So the useful allies are going to be there. There's already a hint of that, and you can see there's 3 dead lizard folk. In this sense, the useful allies will be a group of lizard folk who may or may not help the players. Probably will try to avoid combat with them, and have a beef with the bandits. So they could be useful. So this is going to be a relatively short stream. I apologize. One of the reasons why it's a short stream is where I live, they're having their Christmas party. And we, I have to say this with all the love in my heart, we Puerto Ricans are a noisome folk. We like to holler, we like to sing, we like to celebrate loudly. So that means that this hack will not be on YouTube, sadly. I'll have to skip it. And also that this document will be up and running as soon as possible. So as a foretaste of what's to come. And but it will be in the VOD, or should be in the VOD, and on Twitch. So I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here, even if you were quiet here. And we will be seeing you later on in new hacks, hacking the 5th. Right now, I'm thinking of doing this every Saturday night, or at least Sunday morning, whichever seems to be the most appropriate time, depending on my schedule. So thank you for coming, and I will bid you all a good night.